you owe the IRS $1 million and you have $1 million tax credit, you owe the IRS zero.
It's a direct offset to income.
Tax credit, not a tax credit.
Right.
It is true that you need to show substantial economic ownership to be able to capture the investment tax credit, and there's rules that are kind of very specifically defined. There's structures that play to those rules. It is potentially feasible to talk about vehicles that would syndicate the tax equity, but it's a nightmare to pull off, I think.
Right. You know, one of the things our host, Pradeep, asked me a moment ago was, if you go and buy a car, you can get it 2% interest. The car lasts, you know, depending on how long, 7 years, 8 years, whatever. There's a lot of risk. You could run into another car. Solar systems, on the other hand, are probably going to last you 25, 30 years. So why isn't the financing level lower? Now, I know why they've been able to pull this off in California on the retail, because they're marking them up. The average price in California might be $450. The average one that Sunrun's doing might be, not to offend anyone, $650. So simple math tells you they're getting their money back like in a year and a half. That's why it's happening. Went from 5% 1 year to 55% of the market. Okay, something funny happened for that to happen. That's huge growth. But the question is, this risk premium is really unnecessary. We talked earlier about islands, you know, like Puerto Rico, and I looked at a job in Puerto Rico. If the price of oil doubles, your electricity rate doubles, and it already is at 25 cents a kilowatt hour. Well, when I put a solar system on my house, I have an 11-cent levelized cost of energy for the next 30 years. That's the way I looked at it, because I understand it. People don't understand it. We have to educate them.
I have a kind of a basic question. I run a company in Illinois. We do basic research and development on CdTe cells and so forth. But when we talk to policymakers and others, one of the first questions that they're asking us these days is, how does the shale gas boom affect the solar industry, and specifically they also ask about financing. And what are, you know, there might be a perceptional issue that then translates into certain factors that affect financing. But I'm just curious, from your vantage point, how are you seeing this play out from your angle?
Very marginally. Solar is a different animal. Wind very much affected by shale gas. Solar, when you kind of look at probably the states that Richard had in mind talking about solar, I mean, a lot of these what you're looking at is states where still the electricity prices are going to be high, where there's a distance between the retail price and the wholesale price. When you really kind of run into issues from solar competing against gas is when you're talking about utility scale solar competing on PPAs against what might be kind of a gas offtake, and that really kind of only really kind of tends to happen, you know, in a large scale might be kind of like in the Southwest, kind of very, very large utility scale projects. There, I mean, in any cases, renewable portfolio standards, you're not really kind of strictly competing against gas per se. The PPA prices tend to be benchmarked off of the NPR, and the NPR itself is based on the gas price. But I think where solar activity is kind of really brisk, I don't think kind of it's marginally. I don't think it's kind of directly playing against cheap gas prices.
Min, question?
Yeah. So you brought up an excellent point. You brought up an excellent point about the uncertainty of the cost of fossil fuels. Natural gas, I think several years ago, sold at something around $12 a million BTU. This year it hit $2 a million BTU. Has anyone looked at the option price of natural gas as it relates to the delivered price of electricity? Buying options for 30 years. Right? Yeah. What would it really cost?
Great point. Yeah, and our Rocky Mountain Institute just published a paper on that. Yeah. Very good point. Yeah.
Yeah. The only effect I've seen from natural gas is it's putting the coal companies out of business.
Right.
If you look at their stocks, I mean, they're getting destroyed over the last 18 months.
Yeah, I mean, basically, just as a comment, and maybe anybody else can comment on this as well. I've always really felt that a lot of proponents of renewables have not done a really job of portraying the true value proposition of renewables. And one of the things that I've always talked to people about when I've portrayed it is I've always said that this is nothing different than your personal financial portfolio. It's got to be balanced. If we shouldn't be looking to say there are going to be no fossil fuels, there is going to be no nuclear. Those are a piece of the puzzle. The problem is they're big enough pieces of the puzzle right at the moment. The renewables piece of the puzzle is a valuable piece. It's a little bit it's significantly undersized right now. It has the most growth potential. And I think if we can convince people of that and understand the value, just like when you put your own personal financial portfolio together, you're investing in emerging markets, you're investing in small caps, you're investing in large caps, you're investing in growth stocks, you're investing in different things that may not necessarily have the highest return at that time. Okay, right now natural gas is cheap, natural gas generation is cheap. I've been in the utility business for a long time. I remember well when utilities back in 99 and 2000 built a ton of natural gas plants and got severely punished for that 5 years later when natural gas prices tripled and quadrupled. I think they know better. But the problem is right now what we're doing is we're setting up a discussion where it allows people who are not necessarily friends of renewables to say, well, you can't have all solar plants and you can't have all wind plants because they're intermittent resources and they're expensive today. And those are true on their face. But the point is, we don't do a good job of putting the whole puzzle together for everybody and showing everybody that it is a good puzzle. That's just one opinion.
To elaborate on that, just one point, we had a business plan with small companies that Pradeep held in New York City, and the COO of LIPA on Long Island came up, and he said, somebody asked him from the audience, what's the payback? I hate that word. I'd like to travel back in time and strangle the guy who came up with that. Well, right now, the system's about $9,600, and it saves about $1,400 a year. So I would say to them, you want a 7.5-year payback, or 20% municipal bond. It's tax-free savings, 14%, 35% tax bracket. It's a 20% municipal bond. Richard, I don't think municipal bonds are 20%, are they? So,
Well,
a lot of thinking people would go
There's
for
junk
it.
bonds and there are tax-free bonds.
20% tax-free sounds pretty good to me for the next 30 years. So it's not being sold right. I agree.
I've been playing in the utility scale space for about 4 years now, and the discussion that we get into day in and day out is cost of capital. It's the only thing we discuss today when it comes to developing a utility scale project and actually closing it and getting it built. There's no